Here's what happened. My guess is you want that feeling that you had when you got the superstar in Mario Kart. It's where the things bounce off of you as an entrepreneur and you get to keep moving forward. I really believe you're going to remember this conversation we're about to have for a long time. I'm going to share with you my 5 favorite ways to endure the hard days. And this is coming from the last decade as an entrepreneur when I first started off as a DJ. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. Welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. And if you haven't done it yet, you can subscribe and follow the show for the latest episodes. I get excited with this commitment I've made through the help of this show of sharing with you what it really takes to make burnout extinct and to remind you it's possible to then unlock your limitless potential. And I have an appetizer for you that connects to this limitless potential. It is the principle of immense potential. And this states that you have more potential within you than you could ever develop in your lifetime. And so true fulfillment comes from being on the path of developing your potential. I believe for me, where I get the most fulfillment is being on this path of growth, of progress, of moving forward. And it's realizing through Make Burnout Extinct that my business is just one part of my life. And so I could be growing in the business, or I could be growing in my health and fitness or in my relationships, but then it's remembering it's all interconnected. So let's dive into it for today. I think back to this movie Gladiator, where it's the scene, "Are you not entertained?" That could be coming up for you on the hard days of like feeling like you're speaking to the void. And you could be asking, you could be telling yourself like, why is this happening to me? No one gets me. And then what comes up is these trade-offs because of that, those thoughts, where you can feel drained. You could be feeling stressed, exhausted. And then over time, that can cause you to hit burnout when you have enough of this. Because how I define burnout in the context of business is having to close down the business or let go of the business because your body, you cannot handle either the growth that's happening or the challenges that you're dealing with. And for me, I hit my burnout back in 2018. And I go to this quote where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Because after that social media conference, I found over 500 people came together. I hit my burnout, and then it was a long recovery process and something I wouldn't want to have any other entrepreneur have to go through. And so with these, if you don't take the time to move through these hard days and make the change, what can happen is they can stack up. And so when you're feeling stressed, that can lead then to the chronic stress, which leads to the chronic exhaustion, that first red flag, generic red flag of hitting burnout. And that's something I don't want for you. So let's get into it for these 5 ways. I'm going to share with you share with you the tactical aspect of it for each way, and then a bird's eye view for understanding the beliefs that drive me. I'm going to add like a story or two in this too for you. So the first one is this is temporary. Going back to the superstar in Mario Kart, it doesn't last forever. And so what to think about is, when was the last day it felt easier working on your business? When was that? Could be a few days ago, could be a few weeks, even a few months is a feeling. But when you can recognize the timeline and that it is temporary, it doesn't become so overwhelming and stressful. And then you don't get to the point where you're feeling helpless in this. And so I have a tactical technique that you can try to help you in the hard days, to show up and put the necessary work in, to continue for the consistency of making sure that you're working on your business. And that is the at least technique. Because it can be easy to freeze or avoid putting in the reps for the work that's required. But then eventually that's going to lead to the burnout, which is you're going to either have to let go of the business or close it down. So with the at least technique, it's telling yourself, at least I'm going to get in whatever is the bare minimum for you to, one, make it feel like it was a neutral day, or that you at least did not go very far backwards working on this business. But what happens is it helps for starting small, and then it can start the momentum. So you can continue to put in more work when you feel that momentum, But for the body, if it feels like it's going to require less effort, the body's more willing to show up and put the rep in. And so it's remembering not just that the hard days are temporary, but within those hard days, the emotions are temporary. And so, you get bored being pissed off all the time. Like, that's where variety is really important for the nervous system. And so you can remember that whatever you're going through right now for a work task and you're feeling stuck, you can tell yourself, okay, rather than it going to take me all day is the feeling, just remind yourself, hey, I just have another like 3 hours left or an hour left, and then I'm going to move through this. And that can really help you. And I connect back to, for me, being in Oregon, Florence, Oregon, and this is where it's leveraging pain. And so I was stuck on one of the episodes for this show because I hadn't prepared for it. And I felt like I had to have the act of a professional robot. I wasn't familiar as much now that I am with this work of how to make burnout extinct. It was for me trying to get my ideas and make them simplified for you and share with you what they were all about. That's where these techniques came up of like the at least technique. And so it took me a long time. And then what happened is for me, I just had to remind myself and get the message that this is temporary. I don't know the exact amount of takes. I mean, there was one episode, it took me like over 80 takes, but it was taking me a very long time. And I was trying to force it and like really just stick with it, stay in my seat, not move, just be like, I got to get this done. And so what I told myself was, this is temporary. It's reminding myself of that. And then I used a reward externally to help me out. And so that was saying, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was around like dinner time. So I may have used hey, I got dinner coming up. I'm excited for that. Spend time with Adriana and be able to hang out. And so that was reminding me of like, there's going to be an end point here. It's not going to take me all day. And so that helped me for that momentum. And then there's a reminding myself so I don't like beat myself up and blame myself, is saying that, okay, tomorrow is a new day to reset. And that was really helpful. The next way that I want to share with you is, what am I putting off? That's something I like to ask myself when I get hit with hard, because when I feel this hard, the day it's feeling hard, that could be, I'm hitting this imaginary wall that could be coming up for you as well. And you're feeling stuck because of it. I'm reminded of, okay, there's something that isn't working out the way I want it to. And so what happens is it can be exhausting to just stay stuck in this and hold yourself back. It's like, the idea of capping your potential. And so this is where starting small can help you out, for starting small with whatever it is you're putting off. Because I go back to like dishes. If you think, okay, you got this big project that you've been putting off in the business, that could be like a whole counter full of dishes. It goes back to, if it feels like it's going to be a lot more effort, then the body may not be as willing to show up and put the reps in. But if you then go to comparing it with one spoon, you're like, all right, one spoon, that's less effort. That's going to be a lot easier for the body to show up and put the rep in. And so that's how you can think about it, is focus small for the action to take to create momentum. And so that could be, if you've got to send out that email and you've been putting off the email, just put the name of the person you're going to send the email to. And that can be how you can start small. How I connect back to this was, it was a few months back, and there was an opportunity to apply to speak for an event. And this is an event I'm speaking at later on in the year called Running Man. And I remember Jesse Isler, one of the founders of the company and this event that the company puts on. I remember him saying, hey, there was a question that came in for like, how do you apply to speak? And then it was like, hey, reach out to us through like that website and email that was there. And at first I had the thought of like, oh man, like this resistance came up and I was getting stuck. And it was the thoughts coming up of, man, am I really good enough to speak at an event like this? Or then I was thinking like, what if I get rejected? And that's going to feel like, I'm going to feel like shit afterwards for that. So it took me a while to actually send the email out. And that's where I came back to starting small. And it was telling myself in the hard days, what am I putting off? I'm putting off sending the email. And the reason why this can happen is that with something new, it can be taken as a perceived threat by your nervous system. And that's where you can get into the stress response. And for me, I get into freeze mode a lot of times, where I'll just stay stuck. And so if that's a similar situation for you right now, just remember, start small. What's that one action you can take to create that momentum and get started? Next one I want to share with you is comparing your starting baseline with skills. On the hard days, it can be easy to forget the amount of progress that you've made as not just an entrepreneur, but as a human being. I go to like Pokemon cards. I remember collecting them as a kid, and I would always want to get the better cards. And so I'm like asking myself, am I getting the better cards? Like, okay, a Squirtle, I may have a Squirtle, but then Blastoise, man, that's better. I like that. And so then I can compare and be like, oh, wow, I'm making progress here. Like, this is so cool. It gets me excited. And then from there, it helps me to feel more energized and create more momentum to go out there and collect more cards. And that's how you can then compare for yourself of, are you getting better results? Okay. Does that resonate for you? Because comparison is going to be there. Like anyone telling you, hey, like don't compare to other people. I mean, when you're having those really hard days, it's going to come up. So this is where you can be smarter in how you compare. Where I go to with this is, am I feeling more comfortable in sharing the info about myself or my work? And so that could be, I've shared it before, where a lot of times I had trouble just showing up and being me. I didn't really know what that meant when someone's like, be yourself. No idea what the fuck that means. I always felt I had to put on the mask, or like someone was watching me over my shoulders. And so I never felt like I could just feel safe being me. And I had my moments, so it wasn't all the time. I definitely had my moments, but for the majority of the time, that's how I felt. And so when it comes to the podcast, it's like, how many takes is required for me to get an episode done? Go back to the 80. Now it's more, around one or two or a couple takes. Usually it's one for these episodes, unless I'm trying something new. That may take a little bit longer. But let's say you're a travel designer and you're helping to plan trips to a specific country. You could be comparing your knowledge from when you first got started to where you are now, and that can help you out for the comparison of noticing that you are growing. Or if you're a realtor and it's knowing the history of the house from when you first got the house to wherever you're at now. Did you improve that skill to be able to make sure that when you're sharing it with potential buyers, that they get all the information they can about this home and maybe some cool history about it or stories about it to get them even more excited about this potentially being their home. But what this does is it can get you into feeling more gratitude for the progress that you've made. And then when you're feeling that, it can be a little bit easier to show up and put in the work that's required for this day, for the hard day you're experiencing. The next one I want to share with you is accepting you won't be perfect in every single area of your life compared to the world. I think about it. Elon Musk's companies are generating more revenue than my company. Joe Rogan's podcast is reaching more people than mine is. And I appreciate the shares y'all are doing. Really do appreciate that. But that is the fact right now. David Goggins is more consistent from what I can tell of his running than I am. Or for him running than I am. So instead of beating yourselves up, comparing with everyone else, focus on your best. And then see where you land. That's where it's like discovering more about yourself, being on this path of growth, going to where I believe I feel the most fulfilled. The hunger doesn't have to leave you. That's really important to remember. It doesn't. I want to be my best. And And I realized that can be a lifelong journey with no end destination. And that can be hard to accept, right? Wanting to get the end destination, and then that's where I'll feel more fulfilled. I'll feel happy. But it is an ongoing process that never ends. I want to focus on the best podcast experience I can make for you. I want to focus on being the best athlete that I can be, the best partner I can be, the best speaker I can be. That's way more fulfilling for me than comparing myself. I can learn from others and gain their insights, but I don't have to compare where they're at to where I am at as a way of going back to thinking I have to be perfect. Because what the hell is perfection anyway? I think about that. If you're thirsty and then someone gives you, I think about that for me. If I get a glass of water with lemon and some salt in there, that's perfect for me. Or if I ordered food and came out how I ordered it, or the food that I ordered came out, that's perfect. And then if it tastes great, that's perfect, right? It's so subjective in that way. So just remember to focus on your best. And then it goes back to remembering your baseline as well through that process. Because this is what comes up. When you're instead of putting more focus on what you lack, think about it as the trade-offs, right? You have a certain amount of time that you can focus on emails before you get bored or want to do something else. And so that is helping you to continue to make progress towards your best, is knowing what that number is. Because then you can figure out your time for your work time blocks. Does that make sense? Because then you can figure out how much time you need for a reset after that work time block, where you can get squats in, push-ups, or you can walk around for a little bit before you can come back to that work task, or you can start something new. Other thing you can think about is like, how many conversations can you have in your day before you feel drained? Do you know that number? And then there's so many other areas that you can document for focusing on your best. But you get the idea. And it's minimizing the time you're doing things that you don't want to do. Figuring that out. And it goes back to start small and remembering that it's a lifelong journey in this. So I hope that makes sense. The next one is, this is natural. Like a swing in a playground, you have that momentum that you can feel moving forward, and then you're going to feel like you're going backwards. And that's where these hard days can come up. And so it's remembering that hard days are natural because you've experienced the easier days, and now you get the hard days, and then you're going to experience some easier days. The nervous system wants to keep you in balance. And so that's how you can remember with these hard days, is that easier days are coming soon. Where you start isn't where you end if you move forward. And so a way that you can speed this up that's helpful on these hard days to continue to move towards easier days is to reset with movement throughout the day. So movement, which I found out about this, the first time I found out about this was so wild to me, that movement literally produces energy and you feel more energized. And just, it hadn't clicked until someone was really able to explain it in detail what's going on. But when I feel more energized, I'm going to make better decisions. And so if I'm stuck, on a new landing page, this is what came up for me one time. I was stuck on a new landing page idea for an upcoming event. And I used to sit there and I was like pushing through, and it was fucking exhausting. So it's just getting up is what I did. And I got up and I did like 30 burpees, felt more energized, was able to figure out what was blocking me for the challenge and to be able to move through it. But having this happen throughout the day can help you to create more momentum to move forward and then make the day easier. And even in the hard days, it could end up by the end of it, becoming an easier day. And that's what's so cool about this. is you have those capabilities within you to make that happen. And you can move in different ways. That's where variety is really helpful. Or you could use a push start technique. And this is doing an activity of movement either right before going to bed or right when you wake up for at least 10 seconds. So that could be stretching. It could be a few push-ups or dancing. But what that can do, especially right before going to bed, if it's been a really hard day, is that you remind the body of this important skill of doing things even when you don't feel like it. You put a rep in. And it's just 10 seconds. So it goes back to, if it feels like it's going to be less effort, the body's more willing to show up and put the rep in. And then you get to feel more confident because you just did that and put the rep in even when you didn't feel like it. And so that gets really exciting to then be able to go to bed feeling like you did something that helped to push you forward. Even if everything else didn't work out how you wanted it to that day. So those are the 5 ways. Together, I want us to take a deep inhale through the nose, exhale out through the mouth, get settled in. I got a bonus one for you. So deep inhale. And then out. And what you can even do right now is noticing, bringing your awareness to the different areas of your body and noticing if there's any pressure that can come up right now. Is there any area that you're feeling pressure? Because on the hard days, that's where I feel more stressed. And so for my signal, it's pressure. That can be a common one for when you feel stressed, is pressure. Usually it's on my left side right now. It can switch up its location. That's where it's at for me. And so how I imagine it is a pressure balloon that's filling up with stress. And what's really important for you is to create a list of ways where you feel you're releasing stress out. What's the habits for the way you can think about it, distract yourself, or that you relax on these hard days? And then from there, it's asking yourself, are these habits resonating for you, where they actually help for you to release stress? Because it's like watching a movie. Saving Private Ryan versus Dodgeball, there's a difference in how I'm going to feel for those movies. Which one is helping me to feel less stressed? Or walking outside without headphones compared to watching a movie? Which one helps me to feel less stressed after I do it, after I put the rep in? And when you can start to figure that out for yourself, for that list, that becomes very helpful for moving forward on those hard days. And to be able to, how you can imagine for these pressure balloons is to pop them, because your body has a certain amount of capacity to handle and hold the stress. These pressure balloons is how you can think about it. There's a certain amount of pressure balloons before it has to release that stress out somehow. And one of those ways can be hitting burnout. And so for you, it's actively popping these pressure balloons and releasing them out. And especially on these hard days, so they don't keep building up. And then what I want to come back to is not just first before sharing with you this principle again, I want to share with you the 3 phases of habit formation. It's the awkward phase, angry, autopilot phase. At the beginning, if you right now have the list of habits that you've made and you've noticed that these really don't help you to feel less stressed, it's more distracting for you. Once you find a new habit that you want to bring into your life, is remembering at the beginning for those first few days is going to be awkward. And then you're going to hit this like imaginary wall, which is where you get angry and you don't want to show up and put the reps in. And that goes back to the reminder that anything new can be taken as a perceived threat by the nervous system. And so when you have a new habit, your body could then create a stress response when you've put in enough reps where it may actually be something that sticks in the long term. And then as you move through that phase, you get into the autopilot phase. And this is where you're not putting a lot of conscious effort towards showing up and putting the reps in. It's just something that happens. I think of like a habit of brushing my teeth, just something I do. And so it's remembering with each one of these phases that they are also temporary. And that's remembering with more repetitions, you can move through each one, and that you're going to have to go through these a few times with new habits because life happens, you're going to deal with new challenges. And so it's also reminding yourself that with each one of these phases, including the autopilot phase, that you're going to move through those phases. But now coming back to this principle of immense potential, to hold on to this on these hard days. It's remembering that you have more potential within you than you could ever develop in your lifetime. And true fulfillment comes from being on the path of developing your potential. And I want to tell you, if you haven't heard it yet today, I believe in you. You have the capabilities to be able to endure these hard days. You got this.